Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today I will be taking you through a new type of aggro deck. New Swarm is what I'm calling it. This is for all of you people out there like me that enjoy aggro, but also enjoy not playing meta decks. As I'm sure many of you are aware, ladder and ranked right now is full of people playing the burn aggro list that's very cheap to craft, it's very easy to play, it's very effective at what it does. But I don't really enjoy playing decks that everyone else is playing, so instead I've come up with a different kind of aggro for all you people out there who do want something a bit different but still enjoy playing aggro archetypes. And so this is it. And now it's important to imagine, if you will, that there are two kinds of aggro in most card games. One is burn and one is swarm. Now burn is what the other list is like, using cards like Crimson Disciple and Imperial Demolitionist to essentially go face. Everything is directed towards face. This, the deck that we're playing today, is a swarm deck, which is about having units on the board and killing them with your units. And before the Rising Tides expansion, it was largely considered that Swarm was the only way that you could really play aggro, and that burn, because of spells like Decimate costing 5, they were seen as too expensive, too slow, that they would never work. Well, it turns out we were all wrong, that in fact, you know, really Demolitionist is the only card that I can think of that really got added that made a big impact from the new set, and maybe one card was all it needed, but most of it was already there for us, so perhaps we just all were wrong. But this is Swarm aggro, and we're playing it with a Bilgewater, something that you may not have seen too much of. Bilgewater has obviously been used probably mostly in kind of either deep or Twisted Fate decks, but we're using the sort of one-cost allies cards that they got to help this deck along. So let's go into the deck and talk about what it's trying to do, what we are aiming to do, and how we are going to do it. So we have two Elixir of Wraths, and as I say, straight away you can tell that this is very different to the other archetype of burn that you would see in Nox and P&Z, and that's because they would never run this card, because they don't care about their units doing damage, they care about just what can directly do damage to the Nexus, whereas we do care about our units doing damage, and that's why Elixir of Wrath can be quite effective at doing so. Obviously giving an ally 3-0 this round is a very aggressive spell. It only costs 1 and can win you a game, and so therefore it's very good. It's very good if you pair it with something like Fizz. And let me explain Fizz, because Fizz is an interesting inclusion in this list. Yes, he's a 1-drop, of course, so he kind of fits in with the, you know, trying to play something on 1 and going aggressive, and he only costs 1, and he's a 2-1, so we can swarm with him and get extra units out, and great. But Fizz isn't your primary 1-cost. If you have any other 1-cost option in your hand, you will be playing them on turn 1 instead of Fizz. Fizz is not really for that. Fizz is for more when you're on turn 3, 4, maybe even 5, when they've got a board set up, and no longer can you just normally get through it. Fizz is for that, when you can play an Elixir of Wrath on Fizz or another spell on Fizz, buff him up and give him elusive to try and finish a game. That's what Fizz's job kind of is. He's more of like a potential closer as well if you've got a spell in hand, because often you'll be developing units on turns 1, 2, 3, so you'll want the spells in turns, you know, 3, 4, 5 maybe, and that's where Fizz probably shines a lot more, rather than playing in turn 1. Next up, Jagged Butcher. Now this card, I think I sort of misinterpreted as not as good as it was, and that's because you see this plunder and you see grant me 1/1, and I just thought, oh man, you gotta attack first with something and then get plunder. That's not very good. Like but then you think about it more, and Cithra of Cloudfield is just a 1-mana 2/2 anyway that doesn't get any buffs. Sure, it's got an elite tag, but for a 1-drop that doesn't really matter. And I think about it and go, well, Cithra is played in Demacia aggro lists. Why would you not play Jagged Butcher? Jagged Butcher is essentially just a 2/2 anyway. And so I think Jagged Butcher is just a good card that you can definitely play. I think it's because not getting a plunger somehow feels bad, but just the 1-mana 2/2 anyway is pretty good. And obviously in certain circumstances where you're like, say, on turn 3 and your open attack is just really good, you know, you might get a 1-mana 3/3 as well, which is really nice. Rearguard, I don't need to really explain. He's just really good. Primary 1-drop. Saboteur isn't the strongest card because it's 1 health, but you know, it can deal direct damage to face. It can trigger plunder if you really need it, and obviously it can deal 3 attack if they don't have a blocker. Precious Pet is obviously very good. Essentially unblockable turn 1. I don't think there is a card that can block it on turn 1 unless they go Warning Shot into Butcher. That would be an interesting play. But yeah, Precious Pet, just very solid. Obviously a great swarm tool. And Battlecaster, here is how you can tell a deck is either a swarm deck or a burn deck. Are they playing Battlecaster? If they are, it's a swarm deck, because you know, giving all your other allies +1/0 this round is really good if you got 6 of them, if you got 6 units on the board, which is what we're aiming to do. So Battlecaster obviously is an auto include. Brothers Bond similarly, we're looking to just use our units to get attacked. That's why we're playing Brothers Bond. Giving 2 allies 2/0s, potentially 4 extra damage to face, which is really nice. House Spider, again, auto include a sort of swarm list. A 2-mana unit that gives you 2 bodies. We're playing Swarm. Draven. They actually cut Draven from the Noxus. I don't know who they are, but people have cut Draven from the Noxus P&Z list because he doesn't go face enough. He isn't directly burning their face enough, whereas we are interested in playing units, and he gives us the potential to Spinning Axe into extra attack. He's also a pretty strong unit himself, that often will deal 3 damage, and you know, we can buff him up with stuff like Brothers Bond and Elixir of Wrath, and potentially get even more damage in. Jagged Taskmaster is another card that I think feels bad when you don't get the plunder, and this is why it's a 2 of and not a 3 of in this deck. It does say ×3 up here, but that's how many you own. It is a 2 of in this deck, and that's essentially because it's not always reliable, but when it does hit, it does feel pretty good. And often it will hit on turn 4. If you've got Draven and this in your hand, you'll always play Draven turn 3. Always. 100%. Because Draven is essentially unblockable on turn 3. And so you'll always play Draven. Don't play anything else. But this card can come down potentially on turn 4. Say you're attacking turn 4 and you've got a nice open attack. You've got Draven down on the board already. You attack, and then you know, you hit them, and then you can plunder and give all your 1-cost allies an extra attack as well. Now they're really under some pressure, and that can feel pretty nice. Noxian Fervor is different in this deck to the burn archetype. In the burn archetype, you're always going face, always, no matter what. In this, you have to consider it. You have to consider, what are we doing here? We're trying to control the board. Do they have a unit that is going to stop us from controlling this board, or you know, stop us in any kind of way? Because we need to have board control. We have to have a lot of units on the board. And so Fervor can potentially go units. It can obviously go face, and often will. And obviously it's a great inclusion in aggro deck to essentially just hit face anytime they try and get us. Vision obviously goes really well with Draven. Obviously goes really well with Swarm. Again, people might say, oh, doesn't this feel bad to just play as a 3-drop? It doesn't feel bad to play just as a 3-mana spell. And also, if you look at the spells that we've got in Brothers Bond, Vision, and Elixir of Wrath, they all go really well with Fizz because they're all burst spells, so they will give Fizz the elusive before they get the chance to block, and so in that sense it can be really good for us. And crowd favorite, obviously an inclusion in any sort of swarm aggro tool. Again, we're going to look to get 4 units on the board by the time we're playing crowd favorite, and by that time we're hoping to win the game. So yeah, this is a bit of a different aggro deck. It's probably not in the best place right now because obviously a lot of people are teching against aggro. This deck in particular really struggles against Withering Wail, but does better against Grasp of the Undying. Withering Wail can essentially just kill our entire board and give them 3 life. Whereas if they go for a Grasp of the Undying, single target removal doesn't feel that bad. Board removal feels pretty bad, obviously, against our deck. But it will give you better matchups against some things and worse matchups against other things, and sometimes you can just completely curve out like any aggro deck and just completely decimate them, and people don't know what to expect, I think, with this list as well, so you can surprise people with this kind of aggro list as well. They may not have seen it before, so I think it is a very strong in certain circumstances. It's probably not quite as good as burn aggro, but if you're like me and you don't like playing the top meta decks and you instead prefer playing your own off meta decks, that you've created or you've seen somewhere, yeah, you might enjoy this if you're an aggro fan. So let's get into some games. Okay, so Heimer Karma. This is the kind of deck that we can normally take for a little spin. And they don't have the most answers to our swarm. We'll probably get rid of a crowd favorite. We are looking for as many early tools as we can. Now Saboteur is interesting because of course they could have a 1-mana Thermo Beam, so that makes Saboteur somewhat vulnerable, I guess you could say, to something like Thermo Beam, whereas Butcher is kind of 2 guaranteed damage. So we're weighing up what our options are here. He could be on Thermo Beam, which in this Mechana matchup you would think is an auto keep, so I'm gonna play Jagged Butcher as there's no way he can kill this, and it's 2 guaranteed damage. And considering this is our first attack, we have to get some kind of damage on him here if we want to have a chance. The good thing for us is, unlike champions like Elise, even though they are aggressive in nature, kind of, it does mean that they can have problems. Now, so there's a Mystic Shot, and that's absolutely fine, of course. And here's another Saboteur, and now we have a real interesting option on our hands again. We can go Draven here if we wish, or we could go Taskmaster if we think that that's how we're going to win the game as well. So we've got an interesting decision to make. We could open attack. Static Shock isn't doing too much. You could go something like Mystic Shot or get excited, but that would be an overkill. So we have to evaluate what he is likely to play if we develop. And I think you always kind of want to go Draven on 3. Worst case, he removes this, right? Worst case is that he has removal for this. Best case is he plays something like Shadow Assassin. But more likely he's just going to remove Draven before it gets the chance to strike. And that's absolutely fine as well. He can't really afford to do anything but remove Draven right now. And if that's the case, then we're in the same point that we were before, but he could have had something like Static Shock as well. There you go. So he did have Static Shock. Again, absolutely fine. But instead we're pushing 5 then, and we're maximizing our damage on that turn. Now next turn we probably will just go Taskmaster Fizz without the Taskmaster Taskmaster getting its Plunder effect, which is fine as well. We got a very nice Spinning Axe Vision combo here. He Mystic Shots Draven. That's to be very expected, of course. So we can afford to go Fizz. If he has another Mystic Shot, then we're getting to ridiculous levels, of course. If he's got 3 Mystics, Static Shock, we're turning into a bit of a joke here. He's got no other cards, apparently. So we are going to have to play this Taskmaster, hope that it lives, go into crowd favorite whilst we still have a somewhat decent board. Pickpocket is fine. Murder. He can attack, and the only spell in our deck that could hurt us is Fervor. That's the only one I could think of. So right now, turn 5 is when he'll want to be playing something like Heimer. We have to hope that he doesn't have Static Shock here. He's already played 1, so it's perhaps somewhat unlikely, but not impossible. But we want to just get this crowd favorite as big as it can. Then if we can go Spinning Axe into Vision, then we are laughing. If he kills 1, obviously we're in the same position we were before. But we have to take that risk, because this is basically going to make or break the game. 5 is obviously a key turn for them where they want to play Heimer or Karma, and it's very likely he might have kept a Heimer or Karma in hand. It's not ideal for him, he shouldn't want to, but maybe he has. I say it's a he, you never know, do you? So it's a spell, so we just have to hope it's not Static Shock. Anything else is fine. That is absolutely fine. And so now we can afford to go into crowd favorite. Knowing that this will live now, there's nothing that can kill this. with his other 2 mana available. We will see what he does. We have to hope he passes. He's played a lot of cards already. But he has another Thermo Beam as well, so not much we could do there. But we can now make Fizz unblockable. Give everything the extra attack. And go in. It's putting him down on 0 right now. He blocks the Precious Pet, and this is why we didn't put it on the Precious Pet, of course, because that's his most likely block, he would have thought. So now with a nice crowd favorite down on the board as well. You know, he's on what, Heimer, Thermo would probably be his best play. If he's got that, then, you know, this guy is joking around. That would be pretty amazing of him, but let's see. He has to have Will now, plus something else. I mean, I can just commit. Can I commit to this? I don't see any way this isn't correct. It means that he has to get rid of you and you. Which, if he can, obviously that's a joke. So he flashes, he's searching for an answer.
Oh dear.
I mean, this will kill him anyway if he blocks it. We've also turned this into a threat. You know, we make his Heimer block this. He's saying good game. Spirit's Refuge, obviously not enough. And we should have him. So even if he went up 4 there, he would have still taken... I think he still would have died, right? If he went up to 4, he would have taken 3. So yeah, I think he was still dead, yeah. Yeah, so there you go. That's how the deck can work. In essence, it is very swarm-based. It's a bit different. Now, as I say, people right now are obviously teching quite heavily against aggro decks. So it's probably not in the best place it could be. Because you will find a lot of people, you know, playing Crawling Sensations and stuff like that. And the power of that other burn list is that it can sort of just ignore a lot of what people are doing, apart from basically drain effects. So it can be a bit of a tough time for this deck, but if you do enjoy playing aggro and you do enjoy you know, not playing meta decks, then this could be a deck for you. It is pretty fun to play, you know, you get to use Fizz like that with the vision and the spinning axes, and it can be quite fun. So give it a whirl, yeah, and have some fun. I've been Chris. Thank you for watching. Have a really nice day.